Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Navneet Singh and with me is Saira Mujtaba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring to you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin discuss cooperation in several areas including energy and trade. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says at UNSC, accountability must be the bedrock of counter-terrorism. India successfully carries out night trials of nuclear-capable Agni-5 missile. Global Hunger Index indicators flawed. Do not reflect India's true picture, asserts Women and Child Development Minister Smriti Irani. Bangladesh celebrates Vijay Divas to mark the victory of 1971 Liberation War. And in cricket, India take firm grip over opening test against Bangladesh in Chattogram. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a telephonic conversation with the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, on Friday. During the conversation, Mr. Modi briefed President Putin on India's ongoing presidency of the G20, highlighting its key priorities. Mr. Modi said that he looks forward to both countries working together during India's chairship of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Having expressed satisfaction with the high-level bilateral cooperation developing on the principles of the Russian-India Special and Privileged Strategic Partnerships, the two leaders discussed in detail the prospects for practical interaction in such areas as mutual investment, energy, agriculture, transport and logistics, trade and investments, defense and security cooperation, and other key areas. In the context of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated his call for dialogue and diplomacy as the only way forward. At the request of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Russian President gave fundamental assessment of Russian lines on the Ukrainian direction. The two leaders agreed to remain in regular touch with each other. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said the world cannot let another 9/11 of New York or 26/11 of Mumbai happen again. He said this while speaking during UN Security Council briefing on threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts, global counterterrorism approach, principles and the way forward in New York on Thursday night. Dr. Jaishankar said the world must overcome political differences and manifest a zero-tolerance approach to tackle terrorism. He stressed that no individual state should endeavor to seek political gain from terrorism. Dr. Jaishankar said accountability must be the bedrock of counter-terrorism.
Today's briefing is part of India's ongoing efforts in the Security Council to reinvigorate the counter-terrorism agenda. And that is overdue because the threat of terrorism has actually become even more serious. We have seen the expansion of Al-Qaeda, Daesh, Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab and their affiliates. At the other end of the spectrum are lone wolf attacks inspired by online radicalization and biases.
Stating that the world should not forget that old habits and established networks are still alive, especially in South Asia. Dr. Jaishankar added that the contemporary epicenter of terrorism remains very much alive and active, stating that dealing with double standards is a challenge both inside and outside the Security Council. The minister pointed out that for too long some have persisted with the approach that terrorism is just another instrument or stratagem. He called it wrong and potentially downright dangerous.
Addressing double standards in countering terrorism, leading to concerns of politicization. Uniform criteria are not applied to sanctioning and prosecuting terrorists. It would seem sometimes that the ownership of terrorism is more important than its actual perpetration or its consequences.
Dr. Jaishankar said, the suggestion that states which are apparently capable on everything else but are only helpless when it comes to terrorism is ludicrous. Dr. Jaishankar said India faced the horrors of cross-border terrorism long before the world took serious note of it. adding that over the decades, India lost thousands of innocent civilian lives. He stated that India fought terrorism resolutely, bravely, and with a zero-tolerance approach.
India has taken strong exceptions to the remarks of Pakistan Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto in the UN Security Council, terming it uncivilized and a new low even for Pakistan. The External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said, Pakistan is a country that glorifies Osama bin Laden as a martyr and shelters terrorists. No other country can boast of having 126 UN-designated terrorists and 27 UN-designated terrorist entities. He said the Foreign Minister of Pakistan has obviously forgotten this day in 1971, which was a direct result of the genocide unleashed by Pakistani rulers against ethnic Bengalis and Hindus. Mr. Bagchi said Pakistan minister's frustration would be better directed towards the masterminds of terrorist enterprises in his own country who have made terrorism a part of their state policy. Meanwhile, talking to media outside Parliament, Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur described the comments as extremely nefarious and shameful. And now in today's Hotspot section, we bring you a news commentary, India's swift and firm response to China's border incursion attempt.
India's response to the Chinese aggressive behavior at Yangtze borders in the Tawang area of India's state of Arunachal Pradesh on 9th of December 2022 has been swift, firm and decisive. India exhibited sharp resolve to protect her sovereignty and territorial integrity. In the early hours of December 9, 2022, a battalion of China's army scaled the mountains adjoining the Tawang tract at Yangtze to set up a post to observe and dominate the border regions with India. Several attempts were made before as well, but were thwarted by the Indian soldiers present in the vicinity. After President Xi Jinping's visit to Nyangchi Prefecture in July 2021, which is just opposite to Arunachal Pradesh, China began spending more on the dual-use infrastructure projects in Tibet, increased the number of troops in areas north of Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim, and exhibited aggressive patrolling in the border areas. China's current renewed attempt indicates that India needs to further strengthen its defences in the region comprehensively. Indeed, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh made a statement in the Indian Parliament on December 13. He decried the efforts of Chinese troops to change the status quo in the region that was addressed by the Indian troops in a firm and resolute manner. While the ensuing fisticuffs resulted in injuries to both sides, unlike the Galwan incident of June 2022, these did not lead to any casualties on the Indian side. As China's aggressive behavior has increased in its intensity in recent times, India is making a comprehensive strategy to address this challenge. These include political, diplomatic, strategic, military and infrastructure developments across the borders with China and beyond. At the political level, India is making a statement that China, despite written agreements on maintaining status quo on the borders, such as in 1993 Peace and Tranquility Agreement, 1996 Confidence Building Measures Agreement, and those in 2005, 2012 and 2013, is unable to adhere to such agreements. For instance, the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had stated at several fora that there is a credibility gap on China's part to address on this issue. At the diplomatic level, India has conveyed red lines in conduct of bilateral relations with China. India's External Affairs Minister had stated after the Galwan incident in June 2020 that unless and until peace and tranquility prevails on the borders, bilateral relations cannot flower. As a result, nearly 30 dialogue processes with China have been discontinued in the last 3 years, indicating to the displeasure of India in this regard. India also initiated several strategic measures to counter China's aggressive behavior, viewing such changes in China not as an isolated phenomenon but as a general trend of its foreign and security policies of assertiveness. India is cobbling up close partnerships with like-minded countries to exert pressure on China. For instance, the Quad was formed among India, United States, Japan and Australia. 4 summit meetings have taken place in a short period of time. Although the Quad's focus is on maritime issues, India is sending a message to China through Quad that New Delhi is not isolated, but in fact has been involved in peace-building norms. One effect of this strategic move is gaining credence and help in diplomatic and military levels in strengthening India's capabilities. For instance, India has been receiving advanced military equipment from the United States and other Western countries and had recently conducted an army exercise at Oli, Uttarakhand with the US Army. Also, Japan and Australia have shown indirect support to India on Doklam crisis and on Arunachal Pradesh. This strategic support from different quarters helps bolster India's choices. Thus, India is making its own military preparations against China in a concerted manner. The Indian armed forces are strengthening conventional and strategic deterrence capabilities for the past few decades. While the previous focus was on defensive operations with over 11 mountain divisions positioned against China, there is now an option that India is toying of raising an offensive corps. Many units of this mountain strike corps are in place, besides acquiring air-land battle components. Finally, India has expanded her infrastructure capabilities. On November 19, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Arunachal Pradesh and inaugurated the Doni Polo Airport and a hydroelectricity project at Kameng district. An east-west highway is being planned to connect various border areas of Arunachal Pradesh. Apart from this, more than 40 strategic roads have been constructed recently across India's borders with China. Anuja Kumar for World News.
Indian government is making coordinated efforts to ensure that people do not fall prey to dubious Chinese apps which are trying to cheat them. Responding to the issue during 0 hour in the Rajya Sabha on Friday, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said in the last 7 months she had meetings with the RBI, her ministry officials and other stakeholders to check the menace. Ms. Sitharaman said action has also been taken in the matter.
That in the last 6-7 months I've had personally meetings with the RBI representatives and with my secretaries in the ministry, and action from the RBI side and also from our side, also inclusive of the Corporate Affairs Ministry, has been initiated in this. A lot of such apps which have been badly misused have also been brought to the attention of MeitY. So there is a coordinated effort to contain such apps and also to take action against those who are misusing.
India has successfully conducted night trials of nuclear-capable ballistic missile Agni-5, capable of striking targets at ranges up to 5,000 kilometers with very high degree of accuracy. The missile test firing was conducted from APJ Abdul Kalam Island off the Odisha coast at around 5:30 p.m. on Thursday. This was the latest test in the Agni missile series. According to defense sources, the test was carried out to validate new technologies and equipment on the missile that are now lighter than before. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
The G20 itineraries have begun to take shape. Sessions, meetings, discussions and deliberations are leading towards thought-provoking ideas and questions. The G20 India presidency is raising important topics for the world to focus on. In the recently concluded meetings, both in Mumbai and Bengaluru, delegates from participating countries put forward their notions about India's G20 presidency. It feels like home. India strategically an important player are some of the emotions that G20 delegates from around the world have for India. Ibrahim Al-Zabi, the head of the UAE delegation, believes that India is strategically a really important player in the G20. This holds true both in terms of its size and democracy. According to the UAE delegation head Zabi, India has an enormous amount of intellectual and policy talent. Further, with India's chairing of the G20, it will set the bar high on the quality of discussion and conversations. Speaking on the atmosphere in India, Ibrahim Al-Zabi said that India is a fantastic and diverse country and always accords warm reception. Similar views are also shared by the delegates who are left mesmerized by the country's cultural side, be it through the authentic Mysore filter coffee or classical music. DG French Treasury Emmanuel Moline praised that balance between work sessions of the G20 and the cultural displays, saying there is a full mobilization of all authorities in India to make this G20 year a success. The meeting of Development Working Group DWG was a substantive one held in Mumbai. Deliberations were made on data for a sustainable world, where how data can be used to identify the gaps and find solutions that was discussed. According to Paul Garayakoya, head of the German delegation, in a globalized world where everything is changing, data offers potential for changing the way of approaching development challenges. The German delegation's head further added, this is why data for development, data for SDGs is so important. Pointing out at the importance of Indian presidency, he said that the Indian presidency, rightly so, is putting that at the top of their priorities. He also said that the G20 is a perfect opportunity to discuss these issues with more depth and looking at what we can do. The idea that India wants to tell the world through its G20 presidency is to ensure that no one is left behind. The Government of India has said that the indicators of the Global Hunger Index are flawed and do not reflect the country's true picture on Friday. In reply to a question in Lok Sabha, Women and Child Development Minister Smriti Irani said that nutrition indicators for children under 5 years have improved in the country and the Global Hunger Index should not be taken at face value as it is neither appropriate nor representative of hunger prevalent in the country. She said that out of its 4 indicators, only one indicator, that is undernourishment, is directly related to hunger. Another 2 indicators, stunting and wasting, are outcomes of complex contractions of various other factors like sanitation, genetics, environment and utilization of food intake apart from hunger, which is taken as an outcome factor for stunting and wasting in the Global Hunger Index. She further added that there is hardly any evidence that the 4th indicator, namely child mortality, is an outcome of hunger. India is celebrating Vijay Divas on the 16th of December to commemorate India's victory over Pakistan in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War. On this day, the sacrifice of war heroes is remembered and rich tributes are being paid to them. On the 16th of December in 1971, the chief of the Pakistani forces, General Amir Abdullah Khan Niazi, along with 93,000 troops, had surrendered unconditionally to the Allied forces led by Lieutenant General Jagjit Singh Arora in Dhaka after their defeat. The end of the war resulted in the formation of Bangladesh. President Draupadi Murmu expressed gratitude towards the Indian Armed Forces on Vijay Divas. Remembering the exceptional valor displayed by the country's armed forces during 1971 war, the President said in a message, stories of armed personnel's unparalleled courage and sacrifice for the nation continue to inspire every Indian. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, India will never forget the valor of our armed forces that led to the win in the 1971 war. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also extended his gratitude to the country's armed forces by laying a wreath at the National War Memorial in New Delhi. In a message, Mr. Singh said, the nation salutes the exemplary courage, bravery and sacrifice of India's armed forces on Friday. Bangladesh celebrated its 52nd victory day, known as Vijay Divas, to mark the liberation from Pakistan in 1971 with enthusiasm and public participation on Friday. On this day in 1971, the Pakistani Armed Forces led by General A.A.K. Niazi had surrendered before the Indian Army, and the Mukti Bahini Liberation Force of Bangladesh with over 90,000 of his troops, which ended the 9-month-long struggle of the people of Bangladesh. The day began with President Hamid and Prime Minister Hasina paying rich tributes to the martyrs of the Liberation War at the National Memorial in Sawar and to Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman at his memorial in Dhanmondi. President Abdul Hamid and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina witnessed the colourful parade by the Bangladesh Armed Forces at the National Parade Square in Dhaka, while schools, colleges, residential areas celebrated the Vijay Divas with flag hoisting, singing of the national anthem and organising cultural programs. Greeting the people of Bangladesh on the occasion of Victory Day, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, in his message to Bangladesh Foreign Minister Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, said that the shared sacrifices of both the countries and outlook for the future continue to inspire the vibrant India-Bangladesh relationship. The High Commission of India in Bangladesh also extended its greetings to the people of Bangladesh. It said that Vijay Divas symbolizes the strong bonds of friendship between India and Bangladesh, which is made eternal by the shared sacrifices of Mukti Jodhas and Indian soldiers who shed their blood to liberate Bangladesh from oppression and atrocities.
The 16th edition of Indo-Nepal Joint Training Exercise Surya Kiran 16 between India and Nepal started on Friday at Nepal Army Battle School, Saljhandi. Exercise Surya Kiran is conducted annually between India and Nepal. Our correspondent reports this exercise aims to enhance interoperability in jungle warfare and counter-terrorism operations in mountainous terrain and humanitarian assistance and disaster relief under UN mandate. Nepal and Indian Army soldiers through Surya Kiran joint military exercise in Saljhandi located in Lumbini province in southern Nepal shall develop interoperability. During the exercise, participants training together shall be sharing the experiences gained during the conduct of various counter-insurgency operations in their respective countries. European Union leaders added Bosnia to the list of official candidates to join the wealthy 27-nation bloc. The Western Balkans country joined the waiting room despite continuing criticism of the way it is run. The approval was just a formality after European Affairs Minister agreed unanimously earlier in the week to endorse a recommendation from the bloc's executive arm to grant Bosnia the status. The war in Ukraine has served as an accelerator for the bloc's enlargement process.
The US Senate passed legislation on Thursday authorizing a record $858 billion in annual defense spending. It is $45 billion more than proposed by President Joe Biden. It includes $10 billion in security aid for Taiwan and $800 million for Ukraine. Senators supported the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, setting policy for the Pentagon by an overwhelming 83-11 bipartisan majority. The NDAA also includes a number of other measures, including repealing the military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate, raising military pay, and imposing restrictions on engagement with Russia. Slovakia's minority government lost a parliamentary vote of no confidence on Thursday. The development has raised the prospect of a snap election amid rising inflation and an economic slowdown. The vote was held 3 months after internal feuding among ruling politicians prompted the SAS party, which was the junior partner in the coalition, to abandon the government of Prime Minister Eduard Heger. The no-confidence motion was approved on Thursday by 78 of the 150 Slovak legislators following unsuccessful last-ditch negotiations led by Mr. Heger to save his administration.
In Malaysia, at least 21 people were killed after a landslide hit a holiday campsite in Batang Kali township of Selangor state on Friday. Fire and Rescue Department said a total of 79 people are feared to be caught in the disaster and 23 were found safe. Malaysian authorities said that 14 people were still missing. It added about 700 officials are involved in the search and rescue operations. The free trade agreement between India and Australia will come into force from 29th of this month. While replying to a supplementary in the Rajya Sabha on Friday, India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal said deliberations are underway with the European Union, Canada and United Kingdom with regard to the free trade agreement. He said the world is seeing India as a trusted partner. Sri Lanka's gross domestic product was contracted by 11.8% in the third quarter of 2022. The quarterly performance has been the worst so far this year as the GDP has contracted 7.1% over the period from January till September. The island nation has been facing its worst ever economic crisis, which involved 2 years of money printing and a currency collapse. The biggest decline was seen in industries at 21.2%, while services contracted by 2.6%. Agriculture was estimated to have declined by 8.7%.
The Sensex and the Nifty today fell more than 0.5% amid negative cues from global share markets. The BSE Sensex finished below 61,350 points, while the Nifty settled below the 18,300 level. A report.
The BSE Sensex declined 461 points or 0.75% to close at 61,338 points. The Nifty also plunged 146 points or 0.79% to end at 18,269. Asian stocks fell except Hong Kong's Hang Seng, which gained 0.4%. Japan's Nikkei 225 declined 1.9% and Singapore's Straits Times Index fell 1%. South Korea's Kospi and China's Shanghai Composite, both indices ended almost flat. European shares also slipped in intraday trade. Oil fell more than 2% as markets assessed the aftermath of interest rate hikes at central banks. However, oil prices were poised for the biggest weekly gains in 10 weeks amid supply disruption concerns and hopes for a recovery of demand in China. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $79.60 per barrel. Back home at the multi-commodity exchange, gold futures for February were trading at 54,155 rupees per 10 grams. Silver futures for March were trading at 67,180 rupees per kilogram when reports last came in. Gaurang Dhawanlal for World News, All India Radio.
On to sports now. News Justin, in the FIH Women's Nations Cup 2022 hockey tournament, India stormed into the finals, defeating Ireland 2-1 in the penalty shootout in Valencia, Spain on Friday. Naomi Carroll put Ireland ahead in the 14th minute, but India bounced back with Udita's goal in the 44th minute. The match was levelled 1-1 in the stipulated time and results decided in penalty shootout. Goalkeeper Savita Punya's spectacular saves in penalty shootout helped India to register the desired win. Navneet Kaur was adjudged the player of the match. India will face Spain in the final for a place in the next season's FIH Women's Pro League on Saturday. In cricket, chasing stiff target of 513 runs set by India, hosts Bangladesh were 42 for no loss in the second innings at stumps on the third day of the opening test at Chattogram. India declared their second innings for 258 for 2 after opener Shubman Gill slammed his maiden test century and Chiteshwar Pujara scripted his 19th test run. Earlier, the visitors dismissed Bangladesh for 150 in their first innings, with left-arm wrist spinner Kuldeep Yadav taking a career-best 5 wickets for 40. Skipper KL Rahul, however, didn't enforce the follow-on despite having the lead of 254 runs. India scored 404 runs in their first innings before being bowled out.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Wall Street Journal writes, Europe's economy likely shrinking, is set to avoid worst-case scenario. The Financial Times reports that Beijing debt toll mounts as COVID sweeps through Chinese capital. The Guardian writes that Peru declares 30-day state of emergency amid protests at president's arrest.
The Washington Post writes, Musk suspends journalist from Twitter, claims assassination danger. New York Times writes, bribery case cracks open European Parliament and finds hidden cash. Japan Times opines, Kishida punts on tax hikes for defense amid backlash from his own party. Reuters reports that energy crisis fears coal comeback in Germany.
A quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin discussed cooperation in several areas including energy and trade. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says at UNSC, accountability must be the bedrock of counter-terrorism. India successfully carries out night trials of nuclear-capable Agni-5 missile. Global Hunger Index indicators flawed, do not reflect India's true picture, asserts Women and Child Development Minister Smriti Irani. Bangladesh celebrates Vijay Diwas to mark the victory of 1971 Liberation War. And in cricket, India take firm grip over opening test against Bangladesh at Chattogram. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Kazakhstan.
Vaishnava Jana tu tene kahiye je pir parai jane re par dukhe upkar kare toye manna abhiman na aane re Vaishnava Jana tu tene kahiye je pir parai jane re
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.